Well, hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for another exciting live stream that is hosted with the MPSA. We are absolutely thrilled to have every single one of you joining us, as always. The topic today is a really exciting one, and one that so many of our members have regularly asked and been interested in understanding what different people are doing from a succession planning standpoint. So we spent some time together as a group to bring you this awesome live stream, and we're really looking forward to it. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us. As you all know, before we start these live streams, we love to do some housekeeping for you. So for those of you who don't know about the MPSA on the call today, we just want to give you a little bit of some details about the association and kind of what we're doing. So as we said, from the housekeeping standpoint, this is a live stream. It's on our LinkedIn page. And as we go through it, we definitely want to make sure that you're able to ask any questions that you have. So please, while you are on the call, feel free to use the chat feature in LinkedIn, and we'll see your questions and do our best to have your questions answered. And as always, we record this so that if you couldn't join us today live, that you can watch it after the fact, or if there's parts that you wanted to review again, certainly you can do that. As well, then we are also really excited about what the BTA has done, and they've created this disaster grant program, which is something that they set up right after all the hurricanes kind of swept through the southern states and really left devastation in their trails. And so we are incredibly thankful for them for setting up this program. And as an association with the MPSA, we've also donated. And so if you would like to do the same with your organization or individually, there is a link there on your screen that you can click on. Sorry, you can't click on it, but you can copy it and put it into your browser and definitely get some more information and donate as well. For those of you that are new to the MPSA, we are a group of professionals that work together truly for the betterment of the industry. We basically thrive off that saying, iron sharpens iron. And we spend a lot of time learning from one another, sharing best practices, and supporting each other to really make our businesses and ourselves personally better. So it's a really fabulous opportunity to meet people, to network. And so if you're not part of the MPSA today, I really encourage you to join us, to learn more about us. We love just to support one another and really dive into what each other's doing to help the industry get better and ourselves. Within our association, there are a number of areas that you can participate and really make the most out of your membership. So as you can see on your screen, I'm not going to go through all the details there, but you can see there are lots of opportunities for you to network, to, make your company better, stronger with the Managed Print Certified. That's a accreditation that we've got here within the association, and many of our members take part in that and then have an opportunity to really dive deeper within our insiders group. And another opportunity that you have within the MPSA is our leadership awards, and something that we just finished having. It's a fantastic opportunity to be recognized for the different things that the different companies within the association are doing for the industry. And as you can see, there's lots of great ways for you to gain and be recognized. So to be part of the association, there are different pricing structures. Certainly, there are different ways for you to get involved. If you're an individual and you just want to learn more or get better and stronger yourself personally, you can do that. If you're a individual dealership or a company, again, we'd love you to participate. We'd love you to support your organization and the industry at large. So there, again, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Certainly, I'm going through this very fast, but we just want to give you just a little bit of a touch point as to what that could look like to participate. And as I said, for our leadership awards, we've had a number of really phenomenal organizations do some great things within the industry, and we love to recognize them every year. So congratulations again to every single winner. We had honorees as well who did a spectacular job. It's just a really great opportunity to be recognized and for all that different companies are doing. And of course, GreatAmerica, as you can see, is one of our winners and the awesome leader of today's call. And they are a spectacular organization. They've been part of the MPSA for as long as I can remember. And we are absolutely thrilled to have them lead and navigate this succession planning discussion for you. From a personal standpoint, from a professional standpoint, absolutely love working with this team, with Sally, with Tanya Stone, and lots of other people within the company. So they're a great company. And again, they've spent some time bringing some spectacular professionals to us today. So I'm now going to get out of the way and pass the floor over to Sally and the rest of the professionals that are joining us today.
Thank you, Tanya. Appreciate that introduction. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sally Browsey, and I am with GreatAmerica, a group called the PathShare Services. And I'm delighted today to be here, you guys, to help introduce the concept of succession planning. We have a number of experts with us today that we'll be introducing in just a moment. The first one is Laura Greenberg. And Laura we're going to think about her as kind of our resident expert in terms of really, what should you do from a succession planning standpoint today? How do you think about that? She is somebody who has the expertise in helping organizations thrive through succession planning. So we'll allow Laura time in just a moment to tell a little bit more about her background. And then we have three great panelists with us today. The first one is Preston Woolfolk. He is the CEO at DOCUmation and had some good stories to share in terms of succession in his business. Stephanie Keating-Phillips is the Director of Solution Production Print at AIS. And then Ty Grigsby is the President of Fishers Technology. So let's go ahead and welcome our panelists. Thank you. So Laura, let's start with you. Would you mind sharing just a little bit about your background with succession planning?
Sure. Thanks, Sally. It's nice seeing everyone. My background, I run a firm that works in the privately held business space primarily, and we do performance acceleration. And so when you think about a privately held business, one of the key things in ensuring performance is high is that you have a plan for keeping performance high. And so we do succession planning and everything from family-owned businesses of 5 people all the way up to several billion-dollar businesses with thousands of people. And we help them do both succession management and succession planning. I'm a MBA out of University of Chicago, master's degree in org dev, and my PhD did research in privately held businesses and what helps them survive through generational change. So that's my background.
Thanks, Laura. Preston, you want to give us a little bit of background on how you came to be in your role today?
Yeah, I'll give you the short of it. Hi, Preston Woolfolk here. I'm the co-CEO of DOCUmation with my brother, Hunter Woolfolk. Only 14 months apart, so that can add some interesting complications to succession planning. We're a third generation family business here in the industry. Our grandfather started in the industry in the 1950s, and father and uncle afterwards, and then us since. So we pretty much have been doing this our entire life. For us, we're kind of a unique story because we are third generation, but we did have more of a company of companies with several different partners in our industry. And really, Hunter and I never assumed that we'd ever take over DOCUmation because it was too many partners, too many different players in the field. And so for us, after a split with those partners, our business kind of drastically changed and then ended up becoming a family business at that point in time. And Hunter and I stepped into the role about 7, 8 years ago. So.
Great. Thanks, Preston. And Stephanie.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Keating Phillips, and I work for AIS in Minneapolis. And we are a second generation document technology company. My father and his brother had both been in the copier industry for 20 years prior to them starting AIS. And I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do out of college. And so I thought, why not come and join my dad? And so 26 years later, and two brothers that I'm working with as well, we started AIS, and we are right on the kind of front end of succession planning. So really excited to share conversation about what I've learned thus far, and hopefully get some great tips from all of the rest of the panel.
Thanks, Stephanie. And Ty.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for having me. Ty Grigsby. I'm the president of Fisher's Technology. We have 14 locations throughout what I call the extended Pacific Northwest, which is including Montana and Utah. Our business has been around really since the early 1900s, and it's turned over a few times through succession planning and all of that. But our current owners have been with the company for about 20 years or so. There is a small connection in terms of family and how that came about, but in terms of me and how I came to this business, I was actually I guess you call a hired gun. So a lot of my experience and background is in private equity, and as part of private equity, I worked for a large Fortune 100 technology company called Micron Technology. We were a customer, and a very happy customer with Fisher's Technology, and so I came on board via that way because I did lots of acquisitions in my role there at Micron on the financial side of it, one of which included several $billion acquisition out of Japan. And so I had a lot of experience doing that. I can bring that to this panel, and I hope to do that. And then I came over to Fisher's as the controller for a while, and we've done, upwards of between 7 and 10 acquisitions. I say that because it's not a definitive number because of how this works out, but we've done a lot of acquiring in the Northwest. So we've made a lot of mistakes. We've had a lot of really good acquisitions as well. So I can bring a ton of experience and hopefully some information for all of you of what to do and what not to do. And we're continually exploring acquisition to this day, and excited about that expansion.
Great. All right. We're going to tap into each of your areas of expertise. Before I get into asking the panelists some questions, for those of you who are attending this webinar today, you guys, we view this is really your time. You attended this webinar for a reason, to learn something. And so we encourage you to type your questions into that chat feature, and we will do our very best to get to those, to answer those, to make this a really good and effective use of your time. Laura, to start off with, you talked about succession management and succession planning, and two different terms. What do those mean even? I think you're muted.
There you go. Great question, Sally. I think session management is something we do all the time. So it's a mindset, right? So organizations that have a good succession management mindset are thinking, what are the skills that I need to have to be competitive today and to continue to be competitive? How do I nurture them? Especially, I could give you some of the statistics, Stephanie and Preston, on successful generational transition. They aren't great, right? And so congratulations, you made it. And one of the things is they're always thinking about talent, not people. So instead of how am I replacing this person, succession management says, do I have the right skills in my organization and am I planning for them? Succession planning is really role specific, right? Who's going to be my next president, my next CFO? If I don't have one, what am I going to do? Those are the big broad strokes differences. They're both strategic. It's that one is more of a habit and a mindset, and the other is an event, something we do.
Very good. Very good. So we titled this succession planning, so we might focus a little bit more on that, but certainly we want to get into succession management to the extent that anyone wants to learn a little bit more about that, because I do think that's an important thing as we see the industry continue to evolve, right? Yeah. Thinking about what are those critical skills that we're going to need to carry us into the future to be successful, I think is a really important concept. So Laura, just digging a little bit more in terms of succession management, if you had to describe kind of what are some of the most important characteristics of a succession management system, what should that look like?
I think the fact, if anybody's on the call, that you're here is a great start, right? Just even thinking about it. A good system understands what are the key roles and responsibilities that need to be sustained for the firm's long-term success. So you can think about the creators of value, right? There's two big drivers. How do we create value? So is that customer relationships or proprietary knowledge, whatever it is? And often in these family businesses or privately held businesses, we see one or two folks that really hold all those creation of value, right? They hold the relationships, they hold the knowledge. So you should know what that is, and you should have a plan for diversifying the risk of that, right? That's one. The other is thinking about how do we plan for and develop the next generation of leaders, right? So especially in a family-owned business, um, often we sort of assume that the next generation will want to work in the business. And it's surprising how often that's not true, right? They want to go off and do other things. And so not making it so dependent if you want to build a legacy business. And the third is really what are the governance and decision-making things, right? So if all the decisions are central in one person, there's bigger risk. So I think about it in those three things, right? Roles and responsibilities, creators of value, how are we planning for the future, and what are the governance and decision making things. That's sort of succession management.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. And then Stephanie, when you introduced yourself, you said you're a little bit newer to this, right? Walk us through your journey and what got you kind of entrenched in this whole concept of succession planning.
Yeah, great question. So I would say what really pushed us to start having those discussions was the death of my uncle. I think that really opened my dad's eyes to like mortality, right? That we're not going to be here forever, and for so long we were just in the trenches, starting as a company that had 3 employees to try and just stay alive for the first couple of years, and then oh gosh, we made it, and all the things. So I think just taking a step back and looking at it and going, okay, we've done a good job. What's next? And honestly, we had talked as a family about kind of what roles and what that's going to look like in the future. But it really wasn't until a couple of years ago I went to a group hosted by GreatAmerica, and Reardon spoke, and I was like taking notes like crazy because I was like, oh my gosh, it takes 7 years from the time we start talking to the time, and I think that the statistic was second generation family businesses only make it like 4% or something like that. And it was just shocking. And that night I went back to my hotel room and I texted my brothers and I'm like, we've got to get this like going because, time's a thief, and we need to make sure that, we really all kind of talk about what we want our futures to look like. So that kind of started the conversation, and that was a couple years ago. And really actually the conversations have gone a lot faster, approaching my father and talking about, what his future looks like, and then bringing in the right people to, the accountants and the attorneys and our spouses, because obviously it's not just 3 kids with their father, it's 3 kids, their spouses. We've got a brother that's not in the business. So there's a lot of variables that go into even making the decision of, is this something we want to do as a team, or is there just 1 or 2 of us? What does that all look like? So we're really still kind of working through all of that.
Yeah.
And so probably about 5 years late to the game, but we're kind of going fast.
Yeah. Yeah. So building on that, Stephanie, when you think about like you kind of got hit and okay, we need to do something like this. If you had to give advice in terms of the 1 or 2 priorities that somebody who's just starting to think about this, they should consider focusing on, what would be those priorities based on your experience?
Having that hard conversation with your parent, or president, CEO, whatever that is, of what does your next 10 years look like, and really getting a good understanding of what they want to do, because there's a lot of businesses that may go, you know what, I just want to sell, I want to move on, I don't really care if this is second generation, I'm not sure, so having that tough conversation. And I think also really understanding roles of, if you've got multiple children in the business, having those really hard discussions, and having, now that I've learned, third party come in and do analysis, because just because I'm the oldest and I'm the only girl and I've been there 26 years doesn't necessarily make me the person that should be the next leader of AIS. And so I think really having those tough conversations with your other siblings to decide, how do we want to go about this? What does this look like? What happens if we get this information back and it's not what you like, it's not what you want to hear? And so really I think hard conversations and having those so that you can then make a decision of, do I want to just ride out and get my equity and move on to another career, or do I want to put my everything into this company and continue to grow it?
Yeah, love it. And probably good for your father too, to to just, okay, let's address this, right? Let's think about this now.
Yeah, I think as it did take a bit for us to like shake that tree of like,
Uh-huh.
whoa, what does this look like? I think he kind of knew that at least I was interested. I don't know if he knew if the boys were so much, because once again, we were just doing the things to continue to grow. And so taking that pause and really sharing with him that no, we really want to have a conversation. We really want to see what this could look like. And really sitting down and doing that methodically outside of working hours. That's another thing. Making sure it's outside of working hours, so that we're not distracted and we can really focus and make sure that we have an agenda when we go into that meeting.
Love it. So making sure that we're just getting the conversation on the table and then thinking about the right people in the roles. Okay.
Yep,
Love it.
absolutely.
Love it. Preston, I'm going to transition to you. And I know that, you and Hunter came into the business, and as we were talking, you shared some really good perspective on it's not just in the family business. You really saw the need to go outside the family with some outside collective resources working together to help you guys. Do you want to share a little bit more about your experience with that and advice that you would provide?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and I think Stephanie, you talked about Mike Rita, and he's been a great mentor and consultant for our company for a long time as well. And one of the bigger things Mike talks about is perpetuating to a team, right? And it's don't go to just straight to one individual, one child, even 2 or 3 children. It's just really strong team. Well, with that, not only internal team comes as, I think, to our extent, a team of advisors from the outside. And I really think, especially if you're somebody here listening to this that is dealing with a family business, especially multi-generation. So in Stephanie's case, right, 2 generations, or in our case, 3. What you really have is a desired outcome across 3 different generations, right? So in our case, you have our grandfather and grandmother, right? Traditional silent generation, a big ode to our grandfather. He turns 87 here soon in 2 weeks, and still working the industry, right? Still keeping up with his old acquaintances. But you have his thoughts in terms of estate planning, transition planning. Then you're going to have the second generation, kind of where they're at, right? Another good 10, 20 years worth of work. And then you have the younger generation that's, probably still got 30 more years to eke out a career in existence, or 40, right? Depending on the age. And so what we were able to look at was, some advice that was given to us is that bring your attorney, preferably your tax accountant, into the room, not your audit accountant. So you've got your attorney, your tax accountant, and your insurance advisor all together at once. And then if you had some sort of consultant working through your business in that perpetuation planning, a lot of mistakes can be made when you're just talking to your attorney about, well, let's go set up a company and do X, Y, and Z, right? And then you set up the company, and then, tax time comes around, which could be a whole year later, year and a half later. And all of a sudden your tax account's like, wait, hold on. You can't do that because this type of company can't be owned by that type of company, and that can't transition, or you just created a huge taxable infringement event and you need to undo that, right? And then there's the whole insurance around all this, right? Any buy-sell insurance, any sort of key man insurance around your key players. What are you going to do if grandpa dies suddenly? What's the family going to do, either for a buy-sell insurance policy or some sort of tax implications? What are you going to do if an aunt or an uncle or a cousin needs to get bought out of the business suddenly due to a major disability? Or what about a divorce? What happens when your brother-in-law, your sister-in-law, your mom and your dad, your whoever just suddenly ends in a divorce? And are they suddenly a shareholder in the company that has never worked there? Are they, hostile to the family environment? That happens sometimes as well, right? Where an in-law leaves the family, they're very hostile to the family, but everybody works in the business. Are they a shareholder with you? How are you going to pay them out? Who has the cash? Who has the money? What do you have to make liquid to get them out of the business? And so that really worked well for us to be able to sit down and bring those 3 individuals to the table, right? So preferably your company attorney that also does your personal estate planning, preferably your tax accountant for the company that also does all your own personal tax returns, because ultimately they're one and the same at the end of the day. And then also preferably some sort of insurance agent to sit there and help tie this together to hedge against the risk of what you're trying to accomplish.
Excellent. Okay. Preston, super great advice as well. Laura, I'm going to pause there. Anything you heard that you want to build on so far based on your experience?
I think Stephanie and Preston said, double click on all of the counsel that the 2 of you have given. One of the things I will say is making sure to build So understanding that we tend to under or overvalue whatever the effort is, depending on our unique vantage point. And so if someone's working in the business, if you have 4 siblings and one is and building wealth there, and the other one has a job as a lawyer somewhere, right? We tend to not think the brother that's building the business will overvalue their impact, right? And the one that's the lawyer somewhere will undervalue their impact. And so one of the things we recommend is separating employment from ownership.
Mhm.
And so if you have 4 siblings, to say, we own this asset, this business that is cash generating. If one of us wants to be an employee of that business, here's the employment relationship. And here's the sharing an asset and how that will be distributed. And the reason that is one of the easiest ways to avoid family conflict, which really is the sad outcome of a lot of this. The other thing, especially as you get into second and third generation, wealth preservation into the third generation, less than 3% of wealth is preserved into a third generation. And so the way to do that successfully is to separate wealth preservation from business preservation. So over time, your business should be an asset in your family's wealth portfolio. They should not be one and the same, which it often is. And so those would be the 2 builds I would make just in terms of mindset that I think is very helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. All right, Tyan, you're sitting there nodding. You've got a wealth of experience prior to come to Fisher's in terms of helping companies think this through from a valuation standpoint, from an acquisition standpoint. Lend us your expertise.
Yeah. So I could talk for hours and days and about the side of it. And I love the insight from both Steph and Preston. And it's true. I think to start with this, let's get down to the brass tacks. This is a very personal adventure. You have to remember that. So from my perspective, as I'm acquiring other businesses or been a part of that, you have to bring the personal side of this. And I've seen it from every different angle. I've seen it from, hey, I want to get out. How quickly do we do it? To that changing in the last hour. So it's very personal. That's okay if all of you are feeling that way. And I think if you look at the perspective of either you're ready to sell soon, or you have a second or third generation you want to pass it on to, or you're 10 years out. I can give you some advice on how to approach each one of those with the same advice. And so I'll start by telling you something you're not going to want to hear, unfortunately, but hopefully by the end of what I kind of talked to you about, how you can fix this. But at the end of the day, for most of us and most of you, our businesses are likely far more overvalued than we think. What does that mean? It just means, to give you some context, as business owners, because you lack the exit and succession plan, your business isn't worth what you think it is. And so there's a lot of steps and stages that you need to go start now to make sure that you can get the proper multiples. And as for those of you that don't know, in this industry, you're looking somewhere between 6 and 8x EBITDA is pretty standard. If you want to maximize that, we've absolutely heard of companies getting 9x and 10x, and it's possible. Really, really hard to do, and I can explain how that works. But one thing I want to kind of broaden I want to give some macroeconomic information to you that I think is really important, and absolutely a big part of some decisions. If you're older and you're looking to exit the business within the next 5 to 10 years, you got to keep in mind you're going to be competing. The baby boomer generation is on their way out, right? And a majority, I think it's somewhere around 2/3 of all businesses are owned by baby boomers at this point in time. So there's a mass exodus of those businesses coming, and they're coming quickly. And the unfortunate part about that, the great part is it's a great opportunity for all of us. And I certainly want to take advantage of that. But I think you're going to be competing as well. And what's the issue with that is we don't have a lot of entrepreneurs that are there to be the succession plan of those businesses, right? So you're going to look at private equities, large family businesses, some of the larger dealers in our industry, the Dexes of the world, and they're going to be looking to acquire, right? Because they're going to take advantage of that. So the succession plan is even more important now than ever, because this large generation is going to be exiting the workforce. So you got to keep that in mind. And one thing I'll say too is, of those businesses exiting, guys, it's like 4 million businesses. It's massive. 72% of those small businesses, and I think Laura, don't beat me up on this, but 72% of those small business owners have zero to little formal strategy to transition their business and succession plan. They have nothing. So they need to start immediately, because there's a lot of factors. And so as a result of all those factors, you're going to overvalue business. Your business is you're going to think, oh my gosh, 6x. I have $10 million of EBITDA. That means I'm going to get paid $60 million. The reality is it's probably half that if you're lucky, if you don't do the right things and put things in place. And so the thing I would mention to you, at least from the PE firm perspective, those large family, they care about really three things. It's significantly more. If you guys know the really dirty word of due diligence, if you heard about that and what that looks like and how they go about that, it's a prostate exam, to be fair. And but the three things they're looking at is EBITDA, as I mentioned. It's how much are you keeping and how quickly can these people get their money back. The second one that actually might surprise you is the intellectual property. What makes you different than everybody else? What makes Preston and Stephanie and Fishers, what makes us different? And you know what you're going to hear from almost everyone in the industry, and I hear it to this day, and my stomach turns, is, oh, our service. Guys, it's not good enough. It's not your service. We all do service really, really well, and it's not a differentiator. So why should I invest in you, and why wouldn't I just go do it myself if you've got the service? What makes you different? Is it your technology? Is it your automation? Is it your data? What makes you different? And then the third thing, which I think is really, really, really important, and something that Fishers has invested significantly in with analysts and other folks, is operating system and your process automation. So automating your business, making sure, and I'll touch upon that here in a second. I don't want to take all the time, but I'll touch upon that, why that's important. That automation of your business, making sure that if you're the owner or you have, or it's two of you, think about it this way. It's a stress test to your business, which means if I walked away for 1 month, I would challenge any one of you to do that. Walk away from business for 1 month and see how they do without you. If they don't do very well, you've got a problem. You need to go back to this drawing board and figure out how can I make that happen? That's valuable. That you can pays dividends to your multiple at the end. If you have a turnkey business, I know that's a mortgage and a housing term, but turnkey means, think of it this way, guys, and this is how I think of it. If you've got a physical document, if I hand over that physical document, or I've got a memory card and I hand it over to a private equity, anybody, I said, hey, everything you want to know is on this, all my SOPs, how this business operates, take a look. I'll see you in 30 days. And by the way, my business will thrive as a result of that. You got to be thinking about that. So think about all the things that trigger that. Every principal note, cash flow management, how stable are your customers and your contracts, all those things, right? Really, really super important. And that's kind of a stress test. And one thing I could provide you all later is I have a stress test calculator that I utilize for my business. And what's interesting about that is we typically do it once a year. And I actually have a meeting that I would recommend all of you do. I have a meeting tomorrow with the ownership group, the four of us, where I let the owners, we're all in the business and we all manage it on a day-to-day, but I let us go away, as Stephanie mentioned, and they get to be owners, right? They're not managers in the business. Let's talk about succession planning. What do you guys want to see? When do you want to exit? These are the questions that you can have that you don't bring other board members in, and let them vent and figure out where your gaps are and what you need to go do to make sure that you can eventually deliver on that. That's what I do. I do it quarterly with the team, with the guys, and we go through it, and it's fantastic. But yeah, stress test. I can provide that for you. That helps you a lot. But to maximize your value and try to get that what is it, 6x to maybe 8x, you got to start investing and automating in your business and making sure that these companies, when they buy you, they're like, I don't have to do anything. And when you leave the day one, this business is fine. That's really, really, really valuable. Back to what Laura was saying. So I'll kind of stop there. I'm sure that's going to spark a lot of questions and maybe some anger, but these are some of the things you can think about.
Yep. And so these are the times to enter your questions into chat. And Ty, when you talked about the operating system, when I first heard about an operating system, I was thinking it was really more technology. Do you want to talk a little bit more about what you mean by an operating system?
Yep. So most of the dealers are using eAutomate or some form of eAutomate. And I mean that, and you got to have a CRM system. What I mean is utilizing that software system to its full capabilities. And a lot of that operating system may not have the capabilities you need. Like they don't do a great job on the financial side in terms of reporting and all that. So I hired a bunch of analysts. It was a very large expense, but I hired analysts because I want data real time, right away, right now. And we built our own Power BIs. And so if many of you know CEO Juice, they're going to be mad at me if they're on this call, but I took what they built and I kind of decided, you know what, I want to specialize this. I want to customize this. And so I brought analysts on board to help me run the business, because the more data I have, the faster I can make a decision. And that's just critical and valuable to any buyer or seller. So I think making sure you have little, you don't want a ton of bolt-on stuff. You want to make it pretty simple, but you need to make sure that you're utilizing those tools to its full advantage. And the automation piece is trying to think about what do your people do on a day-to-day basis that you can automate. Meter billing, for example, having a DCA, PO processor and receiver. When an order is done from sales all the way to the delivery of that product and service, should be all automated, right? So if it's not, you got to hire people. It's operating expense that you have to require, right? Which is less EBITDA. So there's a lot. It's not easy to do, but those things can fetch you really high multiples versus just hiring.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't add. So we looked at 1,000 privately held exits to private equity and what optimized valuation. And I could just say to you, the three things are professionalization and governance, scalability and operational efficiency, and strategic clarity and value creation potential. And so within each of those, professionalization, governance, like high valuation businesses have formal structures, right? A functioning board, clear decision-making processes, financial reporting, at least a couple of external management team members. Low valuation businesses have informal structures, decisions tied to family dynamics and objective stuff, right? When we think about scalability and op efficiency, high value businesses show evidence that they can scale, right? They have systems, processes, infrastructure that can support growth without a lot of operational risk. Low valuation businesses don't really have standard op procedures. They're dependent on humans. And then the third, strategic clarity and value creation. The high valuation businesses have a strong growth strategy. They're with market trends. They're value aligned. They can articulate it, and they have a track record of sustainable profit and revenue growth. The low valuation businesses tend to have unclear strategies or a heavy reliance on legacy customers or products. So just to make it real simple, all those things, the regression on those things is about 0.8 to a good valuation. So how about that? Like really correlated.
Awesome. All right. So I'm going to throw that out to the panelists. You heard what Ty said and what Laura said. Any best practices that you guys have to help ensure that you're doing those things? For example, you might run, whether it be the Rockefeller Habits or EOS or anyone do anything like that to make sure that you're looking at the total system of the company to get where you want to go and need to go?
Yeah, I'll add a note. Yeah, EOS is fantastic. I think that's a really good one for our industry based on the personality traits that we've probably all seen from our family members, the typical copier dog that opened up a dealership, right? 40, 30, 20, 10 years ago, right? EOS, I think, really speaks to their soul in terms of how it's built with a simple operating method. I think that one's fantastic. For us, we utilize elements of EOS, but we also, for us, we put together a 5-year strategic view, 2020 to 2025. It's pretty high level. Here's our big 5 points that we're trying to accomplish. And then something simple for my brother and I, my team knows that we have 5 objective ideas that we're trying to accomplish for this year. And they also know the Hunter has 5, 1-year objective ideas that this team's trying to accomplish. We just kind of rally around those and just operate through those. So I think EOS is fantastic for this industry. I think it's a really good fit.
Stephanie, Ty? Anything?
Yeah, we use EOS as well. I would say, back to what Preston said too, I think you need to be very religious about having, we call them same page meetings. That's an EOS term, but same page meetings are critical, and allowing your team to challenge you and allow whether they know about the succession planning or not. You need the challenge, right? You got to make sure you're being challenged by your team and stressing the status quo. And as a result, the vision's critical. You start with the vision. What's the vision of the company? How do we execute if we're not already there? Again, EOS, I'm a huge fan of EOS, and we use it daily and had our L10 this morning as a leadership team. So it helps keep things categorized, and it's a record keeping tool as well, as you save those things through we've been using it for upwards of almost 10 years. So you can go back 10 years and look at every one of our weekly L10s, every one of our quarterlies, our annual offsites. They're all there. They're all recorded. So it's really important stuff for anybody to really see. But yeah, that's a good one.
Okay. All right. So if there's anyone on the attendees that don't know about EOS, interested in learning more, just I'll throw out there that I'm an implementer. I'd be happy to share a little bit more about the system with you, or reach out to Ty. It sounds like you're executing on that. But you guys, I think the bottom line of this is, right, just make sure that you're looking at the total of the plan, know where you're going, make sure that everybody's marching to that. You've got the data to support it. You're getting the results that you're looking for to ultimately grow that EBITDA, and make sure you've got a good repeatable process in place. All right. So succession planning, right? How do you know if you're being successful with all the efforts that you're putting together? Laura, how do best companies look at this and say, yeah, I know that I'm on track from a succession standpoint, or I'm behind, I better do something? How do you guys think about that?
I will say, I think Ty said, leave your business for a month. Usually when we first get engaged with a client, I measure the level of anxiety they have around being on vacation. And the higher that anxiety is, the less likely they're doing good succession planning on just a very simple level. But you'll know you're successful if the thought of losing somebody, and I don't love to think negatively, so I always say someone wins the lottery and runs to Fiji, right? Is your business going to continue? And if you can answer that yes, even if it's, yeah, it'll be a little ugly, but we're okay, you're probably doing well. If you can seriously say there's no human that would walk out the door with this business, then you're in great shape. And those are sort of the two levels.
Love it. Stephanie, you guys, you talked about, you felt like you were a little bit behind, but you're working on this. How do you know if AIS is on track for succession? How are you thinking about that?
Well, I completely agree with Laura, what she just said. I think had we started these conversations even 10 years ago, I don't think that any of us would have been prepared to have in-depth conversation. I think it would have been, oh, without dad here, how are we going to run? And I think that with his confidence in the people that lead the different teams in our company, and him allowing to like step back and like, gosh, I've built this business, and I've put people in the right spots to make some really good decisions and travel more and do all the things. I think that is probably right now the litmus test for us to go, okay, when he's gone, like, I mean, I would say probably 8 years ago, when he would go on, an extended trip, it would be checking in every day. And how's everything going? What's the forecast look like? What are we doing? And it was nervousness for us as well as him, because then you were on pins and needles, making sure that everything was done before he got back. Otherwise, it would be a failed, vacation for him, right? We don't have that anymore. And so I think that is definitely a great first step. I think tough conversations, where really getting to the point of where you maybe walk out of that meeting and you go, well, God, I don't really like that answer. Or, that now I got to think about something else, or I've got to go home and chat with my husband, and I mean, I think that just shows progress. And as long as it's respectful and all the things, right? But, yeah, we're on the front end of this, and we've got some work to do. But I think we're definitely in a spot where the trust is mutual from both our father and our siblings and other people within AIS, that we can continue marching forward and growing this company if there should be a change in any of that leadership.
Okay. All right. So I've definitely heard today in terms of, for those of you who might be in the ownership role, really stepping back and thinking about what do you want your succession plan to be. And the three of you were kind of on the receiving end of being courted and brought into the business. So Laura, I'm going to turn this one to you. So let's say, for example, we've got some owners on the call today, right? And they're thinking about succession planning. How do they even start to think about, should I be asking people internally if they want to buy it? Should I be looking outside? How should they even start to think about succession planning for their organization?
So the first thing I'll say is, if you are a founder on the call, meaning you're an entrepreneur, and you always feel different and special, that's because you are. As someone that has looked at 1,000 of these profiles of the individuals, these personality profiles, entrepreneurs are about 3% of the population, right? And the rest of us work for them. And one of the things that makes them unique is that they tend to have dichotomies in their personalities, right? They're risk loving and skeptical. They're good with people and not great with people. They're trusting and not. There are a lot of things in one human. And so much of the reason that generational shift is difficult is when you're an entrepreneur, that's your identity, right? It's not just a job, it's who you are. And often for the next generation, it's a little bit of who we are, but it's also a job, and it can be different. Now, the good news is entrepreneurial behaviors tend to be genetic. About 2/3 of entrepreneurs will have one, if they have kids, but it's not always manifesting in how we think. So if there's someone on the call that's thinking about it, I do think the first thing we try to do is separate identity from their business, right? Like you can be an entrepreneur and an investor, but let's think about what you want the future for your business and this asset you've created to be. And then what do you want your future for you? And I think doing that work, because often I've seen founders struggling through that identity work while they're trying to figure out succession. And so then they'll get confused where the person that has to replace me has to be like me. And really what should replace you is a business system that can create the value you've created. And then we can figure out what the humans are. So that would be the first step, is be honest with yourself. And if you're a founder that's like, I'm going to work till I drop dead. And I've had founders say that to me. Great. Let's just make sure that your asset continues when that day happens, and that your family is aware of your goal. Because sometimes I've seen also generations try to convince founders that they don't actually want to work. And I've seen folks at the end of their career be pretty unhappy, right? And then the transitions are failed. So I think Stephanie said it exactly right. Have the tough conversations, right? If you're a founder, if you have a kid that you don't think can run it, have that conversation, right? Create the process and then sit and give yourself time. It's not something you're going to do between meetings. So also to Stephanie's point, find time outside of your workday to really think about it. And that's the first and most important step, I think, is just making it a priority.
Great advice. I love that 3% that economy in their personality, right? That's going to be really hard to play with that founder.
Well, a founder tends to be several people in one. And so they need to be replaced by a team, not a one person typically, right? Or a group of folks that, again, that's why it's like, what are the skills we need and how do we replace those skills? Removing how do we replace this human, right? How do we replace those skills or those activities is the question to ask.
Great. And Ty, I see you nodding your head a lot. Anything you want to add in based on your prior life to Fishers?
Yeah. I think one thing I'm doing now is I don't want to keep telling you should go buy some products, but we use DISC profiles. I don't know if you guys have heard of those or not, but one thing that undoubtedly is true is that great business leaders, and DISC is DISC, right? But the high Ds make really great business leaders. And so one recommendation I might have, and again, you could probably chat GPT this if you need to. There's my millennial in me coming out, but the DISC profile is a really helpful guide for existing employees and for yourself to understand where do you fit within this spectrum, and knowing that historically speaking, really to the start of time, that's probably a lie, but high Ds are really, really great at certain things and they're really, really bad at other things. And I think the point of the DISC profile is that you want your business, whether they're all leaders or not, to be sort of a shotgun approach to that. You want to be well organized in terms of the DISC profile, but the high Ds are really great leaders. So I would start with identifying who your high Ds are within your company and identify how do I talk to them? How do I build them? And here's a really interesting insight is a lot of those high Ds may not have the futuristic view that they could take over a role like that. So you might have to do some convincing and some selling and try to talk with them about what their future might be like, because they might have a hidden skill set in there that's opposite of yours, but complementary. So I would look at that. It's a great place to start as well.
Good. All right. Thank you.
I totally agree with Ty. And I think one thing that is really important if you've got multiple children in the business or multiple people that potentially, it's amazing that what you think you're skilled at and what you think are your best attributes, you may find that, wow, I'm so much different than what I thought, and I always tease because there's three of us. I'm the oldest and I'm the only girl, and my second brother and I could run the Amazing Race because we are the yin to the yang. Our personalities and then the youngest one is like a mixture of both of us. So it's like this whirlwind when you get us all three together, but I think once we did a lot of the disc, we figured out like, wow, okay, I didn't realize that. And I strongly agree with what Ty just said.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Sorry, can I add one more thing, Sally, that I think
Absolutely.
is probably for those of you in the owners in the audience, I can't see you, but hello to you. I'll say some stuff that I know you're absolutely feeling. I see this in every acquisition that I do, but there's a lot of fear in this for the employees. How are you going to treat my employees when I'm gone? How's my customers going to feel? My customers are my best friends. A lot of those things, you got to ask those questions. And they're tough. And depending on the route that you go is going to have a different impact. But one thing you may not be considering at all is let's look to your employees, look at an ESOP, an employee stock own plan, look at some opportunities where they may not be direct family members. They may not be a grandson, a granddaughter, a daughter. But there's probably some entrepreneurs within your company that would really love the opportunity, but don't even know themselves what a succession plan is or how to go about that. Some of this is you doing some of your research and looking out and seeing who out there has opportunity that I could, you could grant them. This is an amazing opportunity for them and for you. And they can, by doing that, they can hopefully learn from you and keep the employees together with the business. It's a really great way if you're on that DISC profile and you really love people and culture is a really big deal, which it should be for every leader. That's one way to not disrupt that those team members that have been with you for 30 years. They feel like family, but they're not ready to retire. So it's a really great way. And of course, Laura she's got a lot more experience in this than I do, but there's some opportunities there to look at. It's worth investigating.
Okay. And I agree with you in terms of when I think about so many of the owners with whom we have the pleasure to work, tend to be a really loyal bunch, right? They're loyal to the employees. They're loyal to the customers. They want to make sure that whatever happens to the business going forward, those two entities are absolutely taken care of. Laura, anything you want to add?
I mean, I would, the panelists have said such great stuff. I think the one lens I would give folks too, if you're on the call, is we tend to think a lot about what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses, right? Whether you're using Myers-Briggs or DISC or whatever. I've actually seen folks across the DISC profile be successful depending on the time, right? So what is needed from the business will match the profile. But what I'd give you a lens is most people fail not because of their weaknesses, but because of their strengths in overuse. And so founders, executive entrepreneurs that are running small business tend to have a lot of big strengths. And I think of it as a Clydesdale, right? So how do you not get dragged by the Clydesdale? You find someone whose strengths are different than yours. So if you're a big, bold leader, your strength in being bold could be your biggest weakness too, because you might take over every meeting and not leave oxygen for folks, right? And so then the way you're going to be balanced is somebody who's maybe their strength is inclusion, right? Where they're going to make sure other voices are heard. And so thinking about what are my biggest strengths and who do I need to balance those so I can ride the Clydesdale instead of be dragged by it is a great question I'd have folks ask themselves as they approach this.
Love it. Okay. So we've talked a good amount about succession planning, and everybody should obviously be thinking about that. Along with that, Laura, you introduced this concept of succession management. And so I'd love for the panelists to start. I mean, obviously the industry continues to grow and evolve, and we need to think about what are the knowledge, skills, and abilities that we need to make sure that we're building in our organizations today to make sure that we continue to grow and thrive. And so what are some of the changes that you guys have seen that you think are important for us to be considering in this industry by way of the knowledge, skill, and ability impact?
I'll add in here. I think, if you look back at this industry over, let's say, the last 30 years, if you're, probably around mine, Ty and Stephanie's age, when you joined in the industry, everybody's still on OMD. I don't know, Ty, you might have skipped the OMD phase, which is thank goodness for you. But, you're still in OMD. Everybody's dragging their feet to even move to a SQL database, 10 to 15 years after the entire world already shifted to it. We're kind of a low code, no code industry, even though we sell technology, which is quite interesting, right? If you really look at maybe the traditional educational attainment of our industry and technological knowledge, it really is not as advanced as what we portray in terms of marketing. And I think that really has hurt our industry as a whole over the last 20 years because we are not fully embracing systems, processes, and the intersection with people as we should have this entire time. And I really think COVID exacerbated that significantly. And what you saw is those that have come out of COVID that have been really successful are those that had embraced that before COVID. And they were able to utilize all, process systems, people, everything, technology together, and to keep propelling their business. And I think we're really seeing that. And I'm not going to say that the big guys even have it sorted out. There's a handful of these big acquirers, huge, these $500 million companies that are still doing things extremely manual. They're just big and they're just buying more companies, but it doesn't mean they're automated. It doesn't mean they're running faster. It doesn't mean they're running leaner. They're just buying. They have been buying. They aren't anymore, right? And so I really think that that's a key point for us as a technology provider is how you ran your business in the past is not how you can run in the future. And you're also not attracting the right talent into your business if you think that you can still talk about the OMD days as if that was a good thing. And that's what we're going to be doing in 2030 and 2035, right? And so I really think if you want to attract the right talent, you need to be talking about, as Ty mentioned earlier, like what is really the operating system your business is operating off of? How are you doing things? What makes you different? What is the technology implementation? What does dashboarding look like? I mean, our industry has not fully embraced business intelligence just as a tool. And you're really still seeing only a few companies have done that. I call it like 5% to 10% of the entire industry has really been using business intelligence to propel their business. And I really think that's a huge challenge. And it's not going to be overcome anytime soon because unfortunately, Laura, as you said, like our little entrepreneur brains just beget little entrepreneur brains. And if there's a lot of second and third generations now in the industry, a lot of us are just like our parents, which is good and bad, right?
Big brains.
Big brains. Yeah.
Right.
Stephanie, Ty, what would you add to thinking about the future? Anything different? Stephanie, go ahead.
Ty, go ahead. I'll wait.
Ladies first.
I totally agree with Preston. I think one of the things that makes me very proud of my dad 26 years later is I don't think he ever thought that he was ever going to be an entrepreneur. I think that the respect that I have from him as we go through these changes of diversification in our industry just continues to grow because it's scary. Change is scary. And I don't think he went into starting AIS thinking that 25 years from now, we'd be selling IT services and talk about cybersecurity, insurance, and all the things, right? And so I think taking a step back as people that are looking at the next step with their parents or their ownership or whatever, and really making sure that that respect level is there for the people that did put their houses on the line and they're, maybe went without a paycheck and all of those things. But I embrace the fact that our leader is willing to look at not just sticking, like Preston said, in the OMD world. Okay, what's the next best thing? Why does this benefit us? We went from a CRM system to that was fine. It was fine. It was working to Salesforce. And why did we do that? So that we could make things easier to navigate throughout our entire company. And I really appreciate and respect because it's a lot of money, right? And change. And I respect the fact that having a leader, and not just because he's my dad, but a leader like Mike, to say, yep, if this is what's going to grow us, benefit us, make us better, then I am all on board and we will continue to do those things. So I just think always making sure that, yes, we don't want to go back, but going future, that's hard too, and especially when maybe it's outside of the comfort zone of some of these people that are in their 60s and 70s and yet they're willing to help us continue to grow and make our businesses better.
Love it. So willingness to embrace change. I love it and drive it. Okay. Ty?
Yeah, no, I agree. Not a lot to add. You guys answered it really, really great. I what I can offer a little bit is, this industry is still going through a massive change and mega dealers are happening, right? And you're going to start seeing multi-billion-dollar ones in the near future. And that isn't scary necessarily. The scary part is what they bring to the table is they bring price competitiveness, right? So if you're a smaller dealer and you're having to compete with any one of us on the call, really, the price is the key, right? And at the end of the day, you got to know your customers really well, and you got to understand too. This is where if you're a smaller dealer, you don't want to grow, you want to stay in your small, your smaller niche area where you own a lot of the market share. I think reality is you gotta let go of your ego, and you got to understand that it's coming whether you want to or not, and consumers are changing. And I said millennial here once again, but don't forget millennials are in their early 40s, right? That they're not the young folks, and they're the ones running these businesses, right? And they consume content differently digitally, right? They don't consume it through the newspaper. And so we want digitalization, we want technology driving, because at the end of the day, it's when prices go down, what happens? And our costs are going up. COVID has just increased. Everyone in here is being pinched because their employees want more money. So when the price is being driven down by a mega dealer, and your costs keep going up, at some point, the hard reality sets in. And so if you can't compete on price, you got to find technology or automation. You got to make investments if you want to stay around and you want to continue to flourish. You got to invest in the technology side of the house, and that it's inevitable. It's going to happen. And I think what you've also seen in the industry is you've seen a lot of dealers sort of shifting. A lot of us made massive investments on the managed IT services business 10 years ago, right? So if you haven't done that yet, it's okay. You don't need to do that. However, a lot of consumers, especially millennials, are starting to look at technology in their business as what's sitting on my network, right? It's not just copiers. It's not just desktops and all those things. It's now what's on my server, what's connected to it, how do I get access anywhere at any time? And copiers, regardless of whether they're here in 20 or 30 years or not, is irrelevant. They are just another asset on that network. And at the end of the day, there's a value proposition where if you can oversee the network and help companies deliver better value on that entire network, really, really, really interesting. And a lot of us are doing it. You're looking at Impact and Loeffler, who have changed significant change management with their sales organizations. They don't have necessarily salespeople just selling copiers or just selling IT. They sell everything, right? One person does all those things. That's a major change. So to be in this business in the long term over the next 10 years, you're going to be up against technology and automation and folks trying to drive that, because we've got to figure out how to control our costs and keep them low. And we're going to invest in automation and transformation that way. So it's a big landscape. It's exciting for a lot of people, but if that doesn't sound exciting for you, now's the time to get your succession planning in, call Laura, and start working through that now and try to figure out what the next plan is. That's the future.
Ty, I totally agree. And I also think make sure that you've got manufacturer partners and financial partners that are in that same mindset as you, that they're trying to figure out ways to profit differently, because we all have to look at it differently.
Yep.
All right. Tanya, welcome back.
Wow. You have all given us a lot to think about. And I feel like my jaw is just on the floor with all the insights and information sharing. It's been fantastic. And Sally, I can't thank you enough for bringing this group of phenomenal leaders to us today to be able to share and to moderate everything and really ask this spectacular questions to really draw out some great information for everybody on the call. So thank you to every single one of you. Your time and sharing out all your knowledge and skills has been greatly appreciated by everyone.
Very much so. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Have a great day, everyone.
Have a
We'll see
great
you.
day.
Bye-bye, everyone.